Dear Mr. President, dear Director General, dear delegates and guests, first of all, let me congratulate President of the conference and you chairs with the election to this high position and wish you all and us successful work during the conference. We are discussing Director General's report of the International Labour Conference, which expresses his vision of development towards social justice and decent work. It examines the continuing manifestation of injustice, inequality and insecurity, and we must counteract those now. We cannot do anything except agree with this. The report mentioned Russia's aggression against Ukraine only as a component of geopolitical instability. The aggressor is deliberately and purposely shelling residential areas, hospitals, schools, churches, humanitarian corridors, critical infrastructure facilities, and electrical grid in my country. Russia has just recently destroyed the Kakhovka Dam, causing the biggest man-made disaster in Europe in recent decades and endangering lives of tens of thousands of civilians. This is a blatant denial of the mission of ILO to promote peace through social justice. It requires a simple and transparent reaction to the aggressor. Such kind of reaction would be exclusion of the Russian Federation from ILO and closure of Moscow ILO office, which is headed and run by Russians. The war commenced by Russia is a challenge to the entire civilized world. It aggravated the cost living crisis in all countries, worsened position of workers at the labor market. The labor market in Ukraine suffered from devastating war. 4 million working women had to leave Ukraine. Another 6 million become internal refugees in their own country. Millions of Ukrainians lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of businesses were destroyed forever. In the occupied territories, forced labor flourishes. For example, those who continue working in the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant are forced to sign employment contracts with the Russian state atomic energy corporation Rosatom. This is a step towards increasing risk of the nuclear disaster. Dictatorship is eliminating free trade unions, whether in Russia or in its military ally Belarus, where real unionists were imprisoned for union work. It is terrible, but the so-called Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Russia have become a pillar of war, supported this aggression from the very beginning, assisting its government in mobilizing workers for the conscription. Even more FNPR forces under the armed coalition Ukrainian workers in the occupied territories to leave Ukrainian trade unions and join their dependent structures. No business as usual possible with those non-union organizations. We cannot invite them to ILC and work with them in governing body. Our country has now completely economically not destroyed only due to the unprecedented solidarity of financial, technical and humanitarian aid from many countries of the world. The ILO, its offices in Ukraine, Budapest and Geneva directly provided great support to organization of workers and employers in Ukraine in 2022. With ILO assistance, we need to solve even more problems tomorrow regarding the organization of safe works, the regulations of rights of trade unions and employers, on wages, social protection, on format of social dialogue. But for this, we need even more support from international structures to restore peace, according to the formula of President of Ukraine, Zelensky, to liberate the occupied territories and people held by Russia as hostages. We hope that Ukraine progresses towards EU membership will greatly assist us in adopting high international labour standards in Ukraine and its legislation, which should become a model of social justice forever. We are facing huge reconstruction process in Ukraine for decades after the victory and liberation of occupied areas. This could be done properly only due to respect of international labour standards, labour rights, including meaningful labour and social clauses in reconstruction bidding, full implementation of international labour legislation and national one, and intensive investment in worker skills development. Thanks for your attention. Stand with Ukraine.